A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series Natural Medicine today. Today we talk about the subject of bioidentical hormones with a holistic doctor, Dr. Heinz Lüscher. Above all, women, whether since puberty started or with PMS syndrome in the 30s, or the menopausal symptoms, there isn't always a holistic solution. But how can we manage to achieve a good interaction via bioidentical hormones and bring the body back into balance? That's what we're going to learn today. Stay tuned. Hello, dear Heinz. Thank you for coming.
Hello, Corina. Glad to be here.
I really liked that in the preparation I saw you simply have an incredibly wide spectrum regarding the holistic treatment of patients. And you had your own family doctor's practice back then.
That was a long time ago.
Yes. And how was it for you back then as a family doctor? Was this holistic aspect already there for you when you come just from your studies?
So, you don't get straight into the family doctor's practice after studying. There's all the training in the hospitals in between. No, I had no idea about natural medicine at the time. On the contrary. During training, we were told that this is natural stuff, it's unimportant, unnecessary, doesn't help. You can forget that. We make the right medicine. At the time, I rather smiled at it.
So you already believed that and said, sure.
Yeah, of course.
There was also the saying, if something doesn't have side effects, it doesn't work.
Yeah, something like that. I couldn't imagine that any such herb could cure a serious illness.
Nice that you are sitting here today and something has changed you to a different realisation. What has changed in you? What have been the most important key experiences in your career?
Well, there's nothing huge or special. I gave up family medicine. I just wasn't happy, but I couldn't explain it. It was just, I felt that it's not my job. Should I continue or not? All my life simply because I learned it. And then I decided we emigrated to Canada with the whole family. And then later, after my return, I worked in a medical company in sales. But because I was in Canada for a long time, about 14 years ago, I received an email from a businessman there. He asked me if I would sell an OPC product in Switzerland. And I wrote back, forget it. What should I do with natural stuff? And then there were 2 attachments, and weeks later, I read them, and that was the first time I saw a scientific paper on OPC. I took it to heart and then said, if what's written there is true, that would be a miracle cure, wouldn't it? And then I did further research and found whole books about grape seed extract, OPC, and written by a university professor. So that impressed me. And so I then taught myself more and more about natural active ingredients. And that's how I got into it. Nobody pushed me in there. I kind of piqued my interest myself.
Nice. It is all the better that there is now interest in bioidentical hormones, because there are really different facets. How do you feel about hormone imbalances in our society? First of all, let's talk about women. Some men have that too, especially with diabetes and the whole issue. But let's start with women. Sure, we know about puberty, that there are fluctuations, but somehow I have the feeling that the hormone imbalances are becoming more extreme due to external influences, right?
Yeah.
Or is there more focus now?
Well, that doesn't really matter. I can just say there are hundreds, thousands of women who have hormone problems and don't know it. Every woman with premenstrual syndrome has a hormone problem.
What exactly is premenstrual syndrome? Is it just a bit of a bad mood, or is it water retention or something else?
The main symptom is abdominal cramps, severe cramps. That bothers women the most. But there's a lot more to it than that. There can be stomach pains, there can be indigestion, 2 or 3 days around the menses. It can trigger migraines or, very often, of course, mood swings. 2-3 days when a woman is really in a bad mood. These hormonal connections normally play no role in medicine.
Yes, you notice it too. As a woman, I also have the experience that going to a completely normal classic gynecologist, I went there and said, I would like to have a saliva hormone test. He didn't really know what I was talking about.
Yeah, unfortunately it is like that. Of course, we learn that hormones are measured in the blood. And I hear that a lot from patients, that the gynecologist said this saliva measurement is nonsense, inaccurate. You measure that in the blood. You just have to look at the lab values. What do the lab state as a standard values? I'll explain it now. In a blood test, from this wall to this wall, every value is normal. The bottom and the top are 20, 30 to 70 times apart. When I measure a saliva sample, the standard value is so small. Now you understand if it's normal in here. If the value is there for you now, then it's completely normal in the blood. But I already have a clear undersupply of hormones. So, saliva measurements are much more accurate. The difference between the top and bottom is typically around 50%, not 20 times.
Well, to understand that perfectly, is the saliva value only more meaningful because the limits are better set? So if you were to set the limits more sensitively or more specifically for blood, then blood sampling would also be theoretically possible.
Well, absolutely, yeah, I see it that way too. But I have the impression that the laboratories or the gynecologists don't know exactly what is normal, and that's why we have such huge ranges. It doesn't really matter what you measure, it's always normal. And so you don't recognise crass deficiencies of hormones.
Which hormones are there for you in a saliva test? As a woman, you have to take care of it yourself. When you realise it won't work with the gynecologist, then you have to look. You could take cortisol or progesterone or testosterone. What are the most important hormone levels for you?
So, it's about the sex hormones, and there are 2 estrogens, estradiol and estriol, then the progesterone, that are very important. Unfortunately, very little is otherwise measured in medicine. But for me, the most important hormone is progesterone. Testosterone, also extremely important for women, for the psyche, self-confidence, physical strength. It has to do with testosterone. I keep seeing women suffering from low testosterone, but no one ever finds out. And then the adrenal hormones, DHEA and cortisol, you can measure that in the saliva, but that's all. Others have to be measured in the blood.
OK, would you then measure more in the blood, or is that just the overview?
Well, when it comes to gynecological problems, that's enough. You can then still measure the pituitary hormones to see if the ovary is sufficiently stimulated. These are blood measurements, but I don't need them that often. I measure the peripheral hormones and always come up with a solution on how to help.
Now, of course, you can also use artificial tools, such as, for example, the gynecologist, where we don't want to lump everyone together. But in my case, it was just like that. Just take a pill, and then the issue is closed. But if you don't want to, and that was my statement at the time, I said, I don't want artificial hormones. He said, then I don't have to test anything, because then there is no alternative. So I had a very special case. What do you think of the artificial versus the bioidentical hormones from handling and also from the risks and side effects? Where do they differ if a gynecologist watches and says, that is interesting?
Well, all medicines are chemical, synthetically manufactured hormones. They are changed. They're not identical to what our body produces itself. It's unfortunately the case, no, fortunately, it is the case, I have to say, that substances that occur in nature cannot be patented. The bioidentical hormones are made that way. You have to make them. They don't grow on trees. You have to make them. So you need a biotech company, but they're made so that the result is the identical molecule that we produce ourselves. You can't patent that. Therefore, a completely uninteresting business model. But it is different from the other hormones that are slightly modified to be patentable. And the effects of the pill, for example, are particularly evident in the gynecological field, or hormone patches. The effects do exist. It's not that it doesn't help. A woman with PMS gets the pill and she really doesn't have any more symptoms afterwards. But, and that's the crucial point for me, these hormones are not only effective in the gynecological field. For example, we need progesterone for the thyroid gland. Progesterone is a natural antidepressant. The brain needs progesterone. The metabolism needs progesterone. These effects of these hormones are often not known to doctors. So, if I now give a young woman the pill, then she no longer has menstrual problems, but maybe she's getting depressed because the artificial hormones don't affect the other organs. They only work in the gynecological area. So many women cannot tolerate the pill for psychological reasons. And that has to do with the fact that the body's own progesterone is then suppressed by the chemical ones. Progesterone is then suppressed by the chemical ones and therefore triggers these side effects.
If we start at a young age with the teenagers, what happens with them? Why do girls in particular have problems with skin, hair, suddenly pimples, greasy hair, emotional fluctuations, pimples on the back?
Well, that has to do with the fact that the hormones are not in balance. Hormones must be extremely balanced, like a mobile. If a hormone is too high or too low, then everything collapses. And this imbalance can lead to such complaints.
Would you then also do a saliva test with teenagers?
Yeah, absolutely. If a girl has menstrual problems, definitely. And this can be treated so easily with biological progesterone ointment. She doesn't need a pill.
Nice. It's definitely important to know that it even exists. Now, when I was researching, I read everywhere that you can also use the bioidentical progesterone ointment if we smear it on thin layers of skin, but still have to be extremely careful not to touch others. Is that correct? Do you really have to be so careful, or how do you recommend applying it?
Yeah, biological hormones go through the skin. This is important to know. So not only the biological ones, but also the artificial ones. There are hormone patches. The hormones also go right through the skin. Now, this is a good application, better than swallowing, because digestion destroys a large part of the hormones. And if we apply it by the skin, then we have 100% of the amount available afterwards. Sorry, what was the question?
Is it really true that you have to be so careful? Of course, if I live in the house with my children and I smear the progesterone on myself now and then, do I have to change towels or does it not work like that?
No, that is right. These biological hormone ointments are extremely effective, even though they only contain micrograms. So, hormones are more powerful drugs. You can't play with them.
I sometimes overdid it, got highly motivated and thought, great. But then there was also such a blatant drop. So it was a bit out of balance.
Well, if, for example, someone smears these hormones every day and then touches the door handle in the bathroom 100 times in a row and someone else comes in, well, the man also touches this door handle, he can get something. It is like that.
What about men with progesterone? Since I also read that they actually also get a progesterone deficiency sometimes, and it's also interesting what kind of effect it has.
I always tell my patients, ask your gynecologist why he needs progesterone.
Now I'm curious about your answer.
Well, the difference between men and women is only in quantity. We all have the same hormones. A man has all the female hormones. Just the ratio is maybe 2/3 to 1/3. Exactly the same for men. It's not about gynecology, it's about this thyroid gland. His brain and his metabolism, that's why he needs progesterone.
Because they also say that it is the beauty hormone for skin, hair, nails, and for staying young. So the hormone booster is the fountain of youth, isn't it?
Yeah, you could say that. I also give progesterone often after menopause. Exactly for these reasons. It's a feel-good hormone. I've never seen a woman with enough progesterone depressed. I've had depression that goes away in no time when I use biological progesterone. It is really good. Also for the skin. The appearance, it also has positive effects.
As a woman, do I have the opportunity, if you say everything has to be well coordinated like a mobile? And I have now seen on my saliva analysis, progesterone is too low. I now have the bioidentical hormone ointment. Use that too. There is only such a short time when we're allowed to use them after ovulation until the period.
No, you can always use it. You just have to know in the first half of the cycle the progesterone level is very low. And then after ovulation it goes up like this. It comes down again before menstruation. So if this increase doesn't happen, then PMS, premenstrual syndrome, develops. So I have to adjust that.
So you start after your period?
But very little, until ovulation, and then double or triple in the second half of the cycle.
I didn't take it at all, and then too much?
It works too.
It's also good if you've taken too much, which can happen in a positive sense. You don't have to overdo it, but it was definitely impressive what power hormones have. Definitely, yes.
That's the way it is.
Now, I have another question. How do I know that it's enough? Or that I'm balanced? Do I always have to take it constantly, or is there some point where you say when, I don't know? Well, any parameters?
I always do the control saliva test. If someone is well adjusted, then once a year is enough. In the beginning, every 4 months, I have to test. I see a woman is low on progesterone, then I'll give her this ointment, and then, after 4 months, we see how did she react to that. These reactions are extremely varied. Some have not yet reacted at all, others already on the ceiling. I have to control this. For me, it's completely wrong to administer hormones without controls. I then adjust to the level of the standard values. But there are women who need more. So I have maybe 10% of women who need higher progesterone levels until the PMS goes away. A standard value is not enough, then I have to go higher. And that's no problem. If you take it too high for too long, then hormone resistance develops, and then you have the same symptoms as too little.
And that's my thing too. What does the body need to achieve this balance on its own? Because at some point it will be expedient not to be dependent on any ointments, even if they are bioidentical, so that I feel well. But what does a healthy body need? We can also dive into the vital substances or in that direction again. To say if a good body is supplied with everything it needs, whether it can then do this regulation itself.
Not necessarily. So, a good supply of vital substances is necessary for good health. But we can't push or squeeze the ovary that it produces more hormones. I don't know of any method. When I do hormone treatments, it's usually for 1, 2, maybe 3 years, and then we try to stop it again. And in many cases, the body then regulates itself somewhat. I have very few women who need this for 10 years or more.
Yes, and then the bioidentical would still be more tolerable. The artificial ones have other side effects.
Bioidentical hormones have no side effects.
Yeah, nice. Great. Thank you very much for all the information. If people still want to find out more about hormones, where can we turn? It's difficult.
So, I got all my education in Germany with the Hormon Selbsthilfe. So, hormone self-help. That's hormonselbsilfe.de. There you'll find much literature. You can get training if you carry out a medical consulting activity. There is a Centre for Saliva Analysis, own laboratory, where I have the measurements made. So this is the address, hormonselbsthilfe.de.
Great. Thank you very much for being here today.
My pleasure.
Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, I hope you were able to take something away with you to bring hormones back into balance in a natural way. And thank you. Bye for now.